it's Janie Jordan, and I'm a guest on the Online Prosperity Show. And today I'm going to be talking with Prosper about crisis management, particularly for small to medium business owners, about the 3Ds: death, debt, divorce, and the impact of those 3Ds on your business. And you're going to learn some quick tips at how you can prepare, and we'll talk about how a stitch in time can save 9. For every dollar you spend, you're going to save $9.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a guest that is a true powerhouse in the world of communication and leadership. I want you to get ready for an episode that actually promises not to just give us insights, but a journey into the heart of effective communication. Now, Janie, how are you doing today?
Hi, lovely to see you. And I know it's early in the year, but let's say Happy New Year.
Fantastic. And it's off to a good start. I mean, especially if we are having a world-renowned reputation risk specialist joining us on the show like this, it just signifies that the whole year is off to a good start. Now, for those that are meeting Janie for the very first time, it's not your fault. She is actually the lady behind a lot of successes in life. She is not only knowledgeable or warm, but she's also engaging, and it's going to be, softening the blow of what it is that we're going to be talking about. You know, when your reputation is at stake and all chips are down, you're going to need somebody like Janie on your side to actually help you, to alleviate that problem. So if you're wondering why she actually stands out, stay tuned as we unfold the layers of her expertise, her journey, and a unique blend of love, leadership, and she's mentioned she's got a chocolate Labrador named Casper. I've been looking around to see if Casper is around. Is he going to join us for the call today, Janie?
No, sadly not. No, sadly Casper has crossed the Rainbow Bridge now, and I'm on the hunt for a new Casper in my life. But I do have Harry here. Harry is a very lovable but old golden retriever Labrador cross that I look after on a regular basis. He has caused me the odd crisis, actually, Prosper, because he loves people. You know, most people think that Labradors are driven by food, and my beloved Casper was. However, Harry is driven by people. His attitude of the world is, I love everybody, therefore everybody loves me. And I'm out walking him one morning, and he sees people in a house. And so he rushes into the house to greet the people who were, shall we say, less than impressed with this large dog running into their house first thing in the morning.
But it's a good thing. It's a good thing you're a communication specialist. You would have alleviated that situation, wouldn't you? Now, Janie.
I did my best. So you see, Prosper, you never know what's going to come out of the blue and hit you. You know, and one of the things that, for your fabulous listeners and viewers of your show is that people get crisis, and can run away from the word. It's like, can we call it something else? It's like when I've given talks, it's like, well, when things don't go as planned, or how do you deal with difficult situations or difficult people? But let's call a spade a spade. A crisis is basically a sudden moment in time when something happens. It is literally a show-stopping moment, a product-stopping moment. It stops the show. Now, in a small business, that could be the death of the founding partner. It could be, oh my God, suddenly we're in debt and nobody told us. Or it could be a divorce. I call those the 3 major Ds for small to medium businesses. If there's family involved, or it's been started by, partners, and it's a small business, and the founding, they're typically larger than life characters, And so any of those 3Ds hit, it causes a moment in time, and the glare is on you, the public domain, which may or may not be the Daily Telegraph or the Financial Review. It may be your local Facebook community page where the glare is on you. So every business needs to think about what are the bad things that could happen, and they are usually tiny, little, insignificant things that bring you unstuck. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. This is I'll give you a pub in the UK, which was run by a family, and I'm going to give you a family-run radio station, very high-profile radio station. So there's a guest in the studio. It's a morning show, so think about 10:30 in the morning, and the woman who's being interviewed has her small child with her. Okay, imagine the child is sitting and gets restless, so it can't be seen, obviously, radio, voice is all we hear, and the child does what? Pulls the plug.
Oh, I can imagine. Is that the plug to the microphone there?
Yes, so silence. So
Wow.
Suddenly the radio station is off air. And can I tell you, if I came into a planning, let's do a bit of risk scenario, what are the bad things that can happen and how are we going to deal with them type thing, divorce, death, anything else that might happen to you, people would say to me, Prosper, that's never going to happen. And let me tell you, the minute somebody says that to me, I go, oh yes, just the mere fact that we've thought of it means it can and probably will happen. So small things like that, and suddenly, well, of course, they suddenly went, oh my God, they did restore power, and the radio show went on. In Zoom, we had many kids running in on, geopolitical serious conversations, and suddenly the children appear on the screen unexpectedly. You could probably plan for that. That's probably something you could really do think about. But then there was this pub in the UK, and this is a real lesson in a small business not understanding the power and virality of social media, was that he decided that he would not serve people in uniform. So there were some young people who had been on tour, and they'd been to the funeral of one of their colleagues, went to the pub, as you do, after something incredibly tragically sad as saying goodbye to a beloved colleague, and he threw them out, refused to serve them. Now, what do you think happened? Phone, filmed it all, went viral, like within seconds, and that's what happens today. Bad news travels, I'm going to say this and I'll say it a couple of times, 1,200 times faster. Bad news, negative news travels the world 1,200 times faster than good news. Wow. So suddenly he couldn't understand the publican. We're talking countryside in the UK, so not London, out in a regional pub, out, typical English pub. And suddenly he's front and center. And it not only did social media go off, but it was also front page news in traditional media as well. So the proverbial front page news around the world, globally, that story was picked up. So anything could happen, but it comes down to what I call live values, and we can explore that a little bit later if you would like to.
Sure, absolutely. And I appreciate you giving us a rundown into this. And I quite like how you specified those 3Ds. I'm going to add one of my own, Janie. It's denial. Like you said, yeah. So many people are in denial that this won't happen to me and things of that nature. But that's something else for later on in the show. So tell us, what inspired you to dive into this world of communication and leadership training?
Well, very quick story, very long story short. I was a young girl in the country who had plenty of time to read because I did correspondence school and I wrote. I used to write anything. I would write and write and write, and I won them, occasional awards and things here and there. Jumped forward, finished school, wanted to be a journalist, and my father went, "Oh, no, not place for a lady." Anyway, I eventually I decided to do occupational therapy. Well, that was a disaster. There's another D. Anyway, I found myself into the world of journalism where I could write and write and write. So I was a print journalist and then found my way into public relations, corporate communication. So in-house corporate communication, where as a very young woman, I hit the glass ceiling, didn't know what to do with me. So I jumped into the world of consulting and very quickly climbed the ranks there and won a few awards here and there into public relation campaigns. And I always found that I quite liked the serious side of it rather than the fluffy. Mind you, I've launched carpets and wine and all sorts of weird and wonderful things and even racing cars. But I tended to look more into reputation and what impacts reputation and how you could actually preserve a reputation. So that I ended up running a company, a media training and crisis communication training company with a former journalist and we revolutionized, we didn't plan to, but the way we trained. So that took me into ultimately what we call the war rooms, Prosper. When some really bad thing happens and you're on the front page or could be on the front page, there's a group and team of people come around the boardroom table. These days it's often, virtual around the world.
Right.
People getting up in the midnight. And so you can really make a difference if you're brave and you call it as it is. Maybe it was the independent way I grew up and my father always saying a woman can do anything. But I call it as I see it. So, there might be 6 people in a room going, "Oh, no, let's give up and go home tonight," which has happened. And I've turned around, clients come up and said, "What do you reckon, Janie?" And I go, "If you don't go out and do a deal right now with the trade unions, your reputation will be shot. So I reckon you should stay here and do a deal tonight." And he went, "You're right." And the lawyers in the room looked at me as if I was absolutely the worst thing ever. And if looks could kill, I would have been dead. So it's a very long story to say that I've always cared about doing the right thing. I've always cared deeply about reputation, and I'm fascinated by human behavior. And it's the human behavior that gets us into trouble.
Absolutely.
Or the lack of it, the lack of manners sometimes. Simple as that. Or people not thinking through, toddlers being in a radio station pulling out a plug. Human behavior is what drives us into crisis or drives us out of. And working, I've been privileged to work with a lot of leaders who need someone on their side, someone they can trust, because it's pretty lonely at the top. And, sometimes their trusted advisors are anything but trusted advisors because they're too busy looking after their own back. It can be pretty tough if you're a leader in a business today.
I can only imagine because so many people, especially these days, like you mentioned that example of the pub where people just filmed and within seconds, the whole world was already appraised on something that happened in a pub, in the UK there. Now, what is it that maybe people should sort of prepare for? Because these days it just seems like whatever you do, you're just walking on eggshells. You never know whether the person you're talking to is going to get triggered, or if they holding their phone to just hold their phone, or they're filming and things of that nature. What sort of things should people look out for, especially when it comes to dealing with other humans?
That's a really, really good question. And I think, it comes back to good old-fashioned manners, if you really think about it. And at the time of this interview, the Australian tennis is on, and there is varying behaviours on display, and it's about living out your values, right? So as a human being, we all have our values, and we have filters, in a crisis, Prosper, the really key thing for us to always remember is we default to type in a crisis. If it's a true crisis and the spotlight's on us, our business, our product, there's been that, someone's taken a picture of being thrown out of a pub. It's gone viral. I mean, so your values are on display, absolutely on display there. And so it's about living out your values. And as a leader today, you need to think about your values. Are we living them out? What behaviors, does my team behave the same way when I'm not around, if I'm the boss, as when I'm around? It's the little things that people notice. And, there's the Alexander Zverev, who at the time of us having this interview, he's playing tennis with a big cloud over his head. He's been accused of some really very unpleasant things in the category of domestic violence. And that's really serious. But, under the protection, I suppose, of the tennis world that doesn't typically take those sorts of issues head on, he's a bit protected. But every single interview, whether he's won a match or lost a match, how he's played, the only question that is really being asked of him is about his allegations. And that's the way of the world today, is that I suppose, if you like, expect the worst, and the worst is likely to happen, but you've got to plan for the best, and you come from your heart. It's really good old-fashioned, if you like, Christian value. Would I want that to happen to me, and how would I react? Because when you're in a crisis, you default to type. So if your type is triggered anger, bash out, well, that's what will happen.
Absolutely.
And in the spur of the moment. So sometimes never send that email, the good old-fashioned advice. You're angry and you want to send an email because you've got to get your own back. You're right. Well, no. What about the other person? Put yourself in their shoes for a second. How would they feel? And that's one of the big problems today, Prosper, is that people just forget good old-fashioned manners, or just stop for a minute, a second, 10 seconds, stop, 3 seconds, 1 and 2 and 3. How does the other person feel and react? What is it like for them? Very rarely do people do that today. They immediately go, defend, there's another D, or deny, rather than that. And it's about your language as well. I'm speaking a lot because I've got a lot to say, so I should probably be quiet, because there are some special language words to use and not to use. But the bottom line is, do unto others that you would have done unto you, basically.
That is a golden rule. That is a golden rule, because most of the things that then end up becoming viral is just people reacting to the fact that, wait a minute, that was not human what you just did there, and things like that. And so many business owners, they're just really looking to create a business that's profitable and enjoyable, and they quickly forget that, there are other people around them that are seemingly either watching or invested in their actions. Now, when we were talking, you highlighted, small businesses might just think, crisis management is for big airlines, like you're talking about the Tennis Federation, those big businesses. Who would worry about, a mom and pop shop? If it's viral, they might just leave a review and we could always respond to that review. But you highlighted that things like death, things like debt, and things like divorce are the major things that come to people unprepared? Maybe you can walk us through either maybe a few examples or some sort of local examples that will really drive home the fact that this is not just for the bigger corporate businesses. This could happen in any backyard business.
And it is those 3Ds. When you think about a lot of, as you were saying, the mum and pop businesses, and they have a big following. I mean, we're in this fabulous little community, very artisan, very sort of food focused these days, fabulous cafes. We've just got a gelato shop that's open. Fabulous gelato up here in horse country in the Upper Hunter. Now, that is run by a gorgeous husband and wife team, and it's a beautiful business, and they're really lovely people. But imagine if something, and they're extremely well known, the husband of the team, whose idea it is, he is a golf champion, he's involved in bowls, so he's very, vital, he's a great, great guy, and he's always out there, and his wife was a nurse, so she's extremely well known. And so you can imagine in that business, what could go wrong? Well, food and people, So in the sense that they could unwillingly poison somebody because there was a wrong ingredient, or they didn't have nuts, it was ended up in someone's gelato, and a child dies or something, or has a massive attack in their shop. You just think through what could happen in my business. And people go, oh, that will never happen. But the little things do happen, as with, the pub guy and the toddler pulling out the plug. So in that case, it could be a divorce, highly unlikely in this case, but imagine if they divorce, the business will be at risk.
Right.
And then invariably, as we always wanted to be amicable, and friends won't split. Well, it happens, Prosper. Human beings, we will go towards the right party, whoever the right party is. So you in a business, you must plan for death or divorce or debt. And it happened in our local community, a fabulous mechanic, and we're all thrilled and delighted, but behind the scenes, we didn't know they're racking up huge bills. The female partner actually has a massive affair, very public affair with the local publican, and suddenly the business is closed down. And cars, booked in for service aren't there. You imagine you're putting your car at risk. So that's a small business in a small community, and you can imagine the Facebook community page went completely bananas about that. So that had, well, I don't know, what's the D for, I don't know, a bit of dirty business or something going on there. So, but certainly that created debt. So it's about thinking through and getting up, if you like, this is my advice, think like a sociopath. You act like a saint. Think Mother Teresa. You act like a saint, but you plan like a psychopath. And if you've got a small team of people, even if they're casuals that come in and say work in your gelato shop or your shoe repair shop or your pub or your horse stud that you're running as a family business, get your team involved, because let me tell you, there's nothing like your team, particularly those on the front line. Maybe you're selling air conditioning units. Maybe you're selling chemicals for pools. Whatever is the things that they can see, they know that can go wrong because you're running the business and keeping you afloat, but they're out customer facing. Your team will have a field day brainstorming about all the bad things that can happen to your business. So that's another piece of advice. Brainstorm with your team and literally give them permission, or have an outside facilitator run it, and you keep away from the business. You step out and let the team come up with all the bad things. They'll get ridiculous, and some you'll throw out the window, and others they'll get serious and then go, oh my God, I could lose my job if that happened. And then they start to get really serious. So it's a really good piece of advice, is to plan for the 3 days and get your team involved and brainstorm with them, because they'll come up with all the bad things that could happen and ways, and they'll be creative and come up with really good ways. So a little bit of structure goes a long way.
Absolutely. So is this what your signature program, Media, a Crisis, and you entails, or could you just maybe?
Yes, so I like to get a feel for the culture of an organization, Prosper, right? So, sitting down with the founders, doing a little bit of a brainstorm, facilitating a bit of planning, get the team involved or a cross section of team up, take a slice through the organization, even if it's only 3 or 4 people, and brainstorm and get really creative, give permission for people to get really creative, and then bring them together and do a little bit of planning. And ultimately, you'll come up with a little one-pager, just the basics, like who are the key people you need to contact? Do you have their phone numbers? If you had to call them in the middle of the night, could you? Who do you call? The basic things of a contact list, right? Then some people don't even have the basics, which is a contact list with all up-to-date phones or WhatsApp, or knowing their preferred communication habits. Where do they go to get information? So here's another one. This was a medium-sized business. It was a cotton gin, for producing cotton. And very sadly, there, because, you imagine when you're processing cotton, there's a lot of dust in the air, and there was an asthmatic, and unfortunately he didn't survive that asthma attack. They were half an hour from away from major hospital. And again, these things can happen, again, in a cotton gin. You got to know who's asthmatic, when are the seasons. Those sorts of things can happen. Are you going to meet the ambulance halfway? You're going to go to the hospital? Anyway, he died, very sadly, passed away. And I was part of the crisis management team, working with the head of HR and the CEO. And I said, so this is a bad thing sometimes people like me have to do. We went through a dead man's Facebook page. The head of HR said, oh, no, he's not connected. No, we don't do that in our company. People aren't. Well, she couldn't be more wrong about that employee population if she tried. When we went in and had a look at his Facebook page, he was incredibly well connected in the industry with people who worked in various cotton gins around Australia, not just New South Wales where the incident happened. And so we had to advise that family what to do with their husband, fathers, brothers, beloved son's Facebook page.
Right.
So again, it's just thinking through and never making assumptions. That's the golden rule here, Prosper. Never make assumptions. So back to what you asked me about the crisis, media and news. So we start with a bit of planning, and then you start to think about, okay, the plan is communication. Who do I communicate with? What media? Media could be the local community Facebook page. That could be your local media. There might be a little local monthly newsletter. There could be, what's the social media accounts like? Are they active on Twitter? Are they X? Sorry, I can't get my head around that. Where are they?
That's a media crisis in and of its own, right there. So.
Absolutely. Let's not guess. So then you look at who are going to be the spokespeople for your company. Someone's going to have to speak somewhere. There may be, local radio might be involved. The ABC, very involved. If you have like the gelato bar I talked about earlier, if something happened there, the ABC would want to know. Our local ABC would absolutely be in touch. So you do need to know how the media works, and it's very predictable, the questions they ask in a crisis. So yes, the crisis, media and we look at the company, where its risks are, get a communication plan together, and then train and test spokespeople for whatever media. Obviously, local media is one thing, but if it's a really big viral thing like the UK pub, then you might want to actually think we're at a very high risk. It could go global. We better do some very serious media training and plan for, the BBC to call.
I can so see. So this is somewhat of an insurance policy because without this, if a crisis would happen, and I'm just looking in terms of maybe even a small business like you're talking about, you could have a cyber attack and people's details, get leaked into the cyberspace there, and it ends up with the wrong players, and you need to alleviate that. That's more like an insurance sort of policy. Now, what would be the best way that people can get a hold of you there, Janie?
Good old-fashioned SMSing and my mobile is the best way to get in touch with me. If you've got a crisis, you want some advice, text me, because I respond to text very quickly.
Right.
So my mobile is 61, but 0414 645 507 is the best way to get to me. And I'm, LinkedIn. All my details are LinkedIn. I'm Facebook page, but yes, LinkedIn and my mobile are the best ways. So yes, it's absolutely an insurance policy. And in fact, if you're a bigger organizer, medium-sized business, you can take out insurance to cover the costs of somebody like me.
Absolutely. I think this is something that, when people hear about crisis management, they just think, oh, maybe airlines, Telstra, Optus, and those big companies. But as you've mentioned, as something as minuscule as nuts in a gelato could actually put a spanner in the works and undo a lot of years of work that you would have done trying to build whatever reputation that you have on there. Now, some people might just be like, like always in denial like that. But at what point do you advise people to actually start becoming serious about looking for a consultant like yourself, right in the thick of things, or when they are actually having, lunch and looking for how else can they grow their business?
The latter. Over lunch, how else can I get the best out of my business, right? 75% of all crises can be avoided. 75% of all crises can be avoided, right? And for every dollar you spend with somebody like me, you save 9 in response. So if you spend, I don't know, $1,000, or you spend 10,000 or 100,000, depending on your business, your reputation is worth at least 50% of your turnover, by the way. But if you send, say, let's make it easy, 10,000 with me, then you'd be potentially saving, $90,000, because there could be lawsuits. People sue at the drop of a hat. We're in a cancel culture, aren't we? Words get weaponized. We're woke. I mean, there's Australian Open, again, we're talking about it. It's been woked, so words are weaponized. And so one misplaced word to somebody who's feeling particularly sensitive that day because of the extreme heat, drops their gelato and bingo, and whatever, the littlest things cause the biggest problems, right? So spend $1 and you save 9 in response. Make it fun, have some, get around the lunch table, get your Zoom, everybody together, have a bit of and just say, okay, what can we do better in this business? What haven't we thought of? What are the things that could go wrong, and how would we want to react? What would we do, guys? What would we do if we got flooded out? Floods are on the rise, and climate change. You never know. If you're living in the hinterland of the Gold Coast, your house, your business could slide down a mountain, literally. You're on a coastline business. You've got a cafe and a coastline. Your business could literally get swept away in a storm. So not only the woke culture, but there's sort of disaster planning. That's a highly specialized area. But it all comes down to, Prosper, how you communicate. People will remember you with love, or they'll remember you with hate if you communicate badly. Do it fast. Here's another rule to finish up with, perhaps, is if your crisis is in the public domain, local Facebook community page, or it's gone viral, you have 15 minutes maximum to respond in the public domain. Once something is in the public domain, you have 15 minutes maximum to respond. And if you aren't organised and haven't got your contact list together, haven't worked out who's going to be your spokesperson, which will be different from the person cleaning up the mess, by the way, because you can't do the two things. Let me tell you, it's impossible. People think they can, but they can't. You've got 15 minutes. That's all. That's the golden rule. It used to be the golden hour. No. It happens too fast. You've got a business with $1 million turnover that could go out the door in seconds and you'll never recover. That's the statistics. I mean, I can't remember exactly, but it's something like over 50% of businesses have been in crisis, fail, never recover from that disaster.
Absolutely. Wow. And I'm happy we got to talk to you right at the beginning of the year before things escalated, because where we're headed to, there's going to be elections in over 40 countries.
I know.
This year alone. So if you're operating internationally, you could be putting out ads there and they might not be sitting well with people. So I think I really urge you to just have a sit down with people like Janie. And like she says, a stitch in time saves 9. And
Yes.
what was your statement? A dollar
for every dollar you, and you're right. That's a great expression, and it says some science behind the $1 you save 9, $1 you save 9. Work out your reputation. What is it worth? And it is at least a minimum of 50% of your turnover.
Absolutely. And if you haven't connected with people like Janie, then your reputation is at stake, whether you know it or not. All right. So you better make sure that that is all looked after. Well, now we've actually spoken to the Michael Jordan of crisis management right here. Janie, I really, really appreciate you for taking the time with us on the call, which was filled with wisdom, love, and strategies to become a powerful communicator. And as you have said, it takes 15 minutes to alleviate a crisis. And if you're not prepared, those 15 minutes will just go like that. And you wouldn't want all your hard-earned, reputation, money, and goodwill that you've put in the marketplace to just go downhill like that. Now, Janie, I can't thank you enough for the time that you have given us on the show today.
My pleasure. And may all your crises disappear and you never have to call me. But the reality is you probably will.
Fantastic. And like we've established, a stitch in time saves 9. You'd rather get started now before it's way too late. And if you want to dive deeper into Janie's world and supercharge your communication skills, either for you, your stakeholders, and your team, just make sure, first of all, just watch this episode again. I know it went fast, but there's so many other nuggets that you may pick up as you rewatch this. And as soon as you do that, subscribe to the Online Prosperity show, where you are going to be educated on things that seemingly are not important, but actually would save you in the future there. And hey, don't forget that subscribe button. Like I said, there's more episodes, more insights, and more prosperity on the way with this show. Until next time, this is Prosper and Janie. We're signing off. Bye for now.